The return through the temporal ring was more violent than the outbound journey. The laboratory in 2026 Bengaluru materialized around them in stuttering fragments, first the hum of servers, then the sterile white walls, finally the full weight of gravity and consequence. Riya stumbled out first, euphoric, her clothes still damp from the 2011 Pune rain. She laughed breathlessly, turning to Aman with shining eyes. "We did it. He's alive. The regret, it's gone. I can feel it lifting already." Aman stepped out more cautiously. The neural stabilizers buzzed in his veins, but something felt profoundly wrong. The air in the lab tasted different, thicker, laced with unfamiliar scents. The holographic displays flickered with error codes he didn't remember programming. Minor timeline deviations, the console warned in red. His wedding ring felt strangely loose on his finger. "Riya, look at the logs." But Riya was already moving toward the exit, energized by victory. "Later. Let's go home. Our home. Everything will be right now." They stepped out of the private facility into the humid Bengaluru night. The city lights glittered as usual, but the taxi ride to their apartment complex revealed the first cracks. Their usual security guard didn't recognize them immediately. The apartment number on their floor now had a different nameplate. Aman's apartment. Riya's key didn't work. Confusion turned to dread as they accessed the building's digital directory through a hacked panel in the basement. What they discovered shattered the illusion of triumph. In this new timeline, Dr. Aman Kapoor was a celebrated scientist, lead researcher at the prestigious Quantum Frontiers Institute. He had published solo papers on temporal mechanics that earned international acclaim. He had married 2 months ago to Dr. Priya Malhotra, a brilliant young colleague specializing in AI ethics. Priya was pregnant with their first child. Photos on social media showed a happy couple at their intimate wedding, Aman smiling genuinely, eyes free of the shadows Riya had cast for years. Riya stared at the screen, her face paling. "No, that's not possible. We returned together. We're still married." Aman checked his own phone, now synced to the new reality. His contact list no longer had Riya as wife. There were messages from Priya, coming home early tonight, love. Baby kicked again, his bank accounts were untouched by the massive withdrawals Riya had made for bribes in 2011. His reputation was pristine. For Riya, the fracture was cataclysmic. Her digital footprint had been rewritten. Dr. Riya Sharma no longer existed in academia. No publications. No awards. No laboratory access. Instead, records showed Riya Mehra, a 35-year-old woman with a history of dropping out of college midway, living in a low-income area. Employed as a housekeeping staff member at a mid-tier hotel chain in Whitefield. She clutched her chest, hyperventilating. "This can't be. I saved him. It was supposed to fix everything." Aman stood frozen, a complex storm of relief, grief, and quiet horror on his face. The machine had not just altered the past, it had branched their lives into divergent realities. His own path had corrected toward happiness once Riya's obsession was removed from his timeline. Hers had spiraled into the void. They parted ways that night in heavy silence outside the apartment complex. Aman returned to Priya. Riya took an auto rickshaw to an address the system now listed as home. The one-room flat in a decaying Bengaluru suburb was a nightmare of damp walls, flickering tube lights, and the pervasive stench of cheap liquor and cigarette smoke. Clothes, mostly men's, were strewn across the floor. Empty whiskey bottles lined the windowsill. A torn poster of a motorcycle racer hung crookedly. Pankaj Mehra lounged on the sagging single bed, shirtless, scrolling through betting apps on a cracked phone. 15 years older, he had not aged gracefully. His once lean frame had turned soft with alcohol and neglect. A protruding belly hung over his belt. His sharp features were bloated, eyes permanently bloodshot, skin sallow. Tattoos had faded into blurry regrets. But the sly, manipulative glint and short temper remained. He looked up as Riya entered. "Where the fuck were you, Randy? Hotel shift ended 3 hours ago." "Money?" Riya stood paralyzed in the doorway. This was not the vibrant college boy she had saved. This was the monster the timeline had nurtured in her absence. "Pankaj, it's me. Riya. We need to talk." He laughed, a harsh, grating sound, and stood up unsteadily. "Talk? Bitch, I need my fucking money. Gambling den took everything last night. Give." When she hesitated, the first slap landed, sharp, backhanded, splitting her lip. "Don't test me today." The abuse escalated quickly. Pankaj grabbed her by the hair, dragging her inside. He rifled through her bag, taking the few hundred rupees she carried. When she protested, he shoved her against the wall, pinning her. "You think you're too good for this now? After I took you in when no one else would?" He forced himself on her that first night, rough, entitled, reeking of alcohol and sweat. It was nothing like the passionate college encounter in 2011. This was pure domination. He thrust into her without care, grunting insults, finishing quickly and rolling off to sleep. Riya lay there afterward, staring at the ceiling, tears streaming silently. The irony crushed her. She had saved this man, and he had become her prison. The following days blurred into a hellish routine. Mornings, Riya woke at 5 a.m. for hotel duty, scrubbing toilets, changing blood-stained sheets, enduring leering guests and tyrannical supervisors. Her scientific mind, once capable of quantum breakthroughs, now catalogued stains and calculated how many rooms she needed to finish before Pankaj's next demand. Evenings, Pankaj's gambling addiction ruled their lives. He dragged her to seedy dens on multiple nights. In one expanded scenario, Riya accompanied him to an illegal basement operation in Koramangala. Smoke-filled room, desperate men shouting at cricket matches on TV. Pankaj lost heavily on a rigged game. His temper exploded. He accused rivals of cheating, starting a brawl. Riya pulled him out, but not before he bloodied his knuckles again. Back home, he took out the frustration on her, slaps turning into punches, a black eye she had to cover with makeup for work. One particularly brutal night, after losing 40,000 rupees, Pankaj came home raging. "Your fucking salary is nothing. Sell your gold chain. Or better, go with that fat manager at the hotel. He eyes you like meat. Bring money that way." When Riya refused, he beat her systematically, fists to the stomach, kicks to the legs. She curled up, gasping, tasting blood. He forced himself on her again afterward, the assault leaving her bruised and emotionally catatonic. The next morning, she limped to work, every step a reminder of her shattered choices. Desperation drove her to seek Aman. She first tried the old laboratory. Security turned her away. Dr. Riya Sharma had no clearance. "Ma'am, this facility is restricted." She waited outside the Quantum Frontiers Institute for hours under the scorching sun. When Aman finally emerged, handsome in a crisp shirt, laughing with colleagues, her heart leaped. She ran to him. "Aman. It's me. Riya. The time travel. Pankaj, everything changed. Please, you have to help me fix this." Aman froze. Recognition dawned, followed by pity and discomfort. His new wife, Priya, elegant, visibly pregnant, waited a few steps behind. "Riya," he said quietly, pulling her aside. "Whatever happened in the past, it's done. I have a life now. A real one. You made your choices back then. The framing, the bar, the bribes. I watched it destroy us. I moved on." Tears poured down Riya's face. "But I did it for us. To remove the regret." Aman's eyes hardened. "You did it for him. Look at yourself. I'm sorry for what you've become, but I can't help. Priya and our child are my future." Priya watched with wary sympathy as Riya collapsed to her knees on the pavement, sobbing uncontrollably. Security escorted her away gently. The image of Aman walking away with his arm protectively around Priya's waist burned into Riya's soul. Additional scenarios of degradation followed. Riya tried accessing old research contacts, former colleagues laughed or pitied her. One old friend from college offered temporary shelter but withdrew after Pankaj showed up drunk, threatening violence. She attempted to warn authorities about Pankaj's past, but the bribes from 2011 had buried those records deep. No evidence. No justice. Pankaj's abuse grew creative in its cruelty. He demanded she bring hotel guests discarded items for pawning. When she resisted, he withheld food for days. In one harrowing night, after a massive gambling loss, he held a knife to her throat while forcing her, whispering how he owned her life because she had chosen him. Riya's health deteriorated. Unprotected encounters with Pankaj, combined with his promiscuous past, left her with recurring infections. She visited a free clinic, where blood tests revealed the devastating news she would learn later: HIV transmitted from him. Alone in the flat one evening, staring at the positive report, Riya laughed brokenly. "I saved you, and you killed me." The chapter culminated in a final, desperate plea. Riya returned to Aman's institute gates at night, rain pouring as it had in Pune. She screamed his name until guards dragged her away. Aman watched from a window, one tear escaping despite himself, before turning back to his warm, safe life with Priya. Riya walked home through flooded streets, the weight of irreversible consequences crushing her brilliant mind into dust. The machine had worked. Pankaj lived. But everything else had died. Months had dissolved into a grey, suffocating fog in the cramped one-room flat in Bengaluru's forgotten outskirts. Time no longer moved linearly for Riya Mehra. It staggered, bruised, and bled. The once brilliant quantum physicist, co-creator of a machine that bent the arrow of time, now measured her days in shifts at the hotel: 47 rooms cleaned, 312 toilets scrubbed, 89 blood-stained sheets stripped. Her hands, which had once calibrated superconducting coils, were now raw from harsh disinfectants and calloused from endless mopping. Her reflection in the cracked bathroom mirror showed a stranger: hollow cheeks, dull eyes, faded bruises in varying stages of healing like a grotesque calendar of pain. Pankaj Mehra had not merely survived the timeline shift. He had thrived in his worst impulses. It was a humid Thursday evening in late 2026 when the final spiral began. Riya returned from her 12-hour shift, uniform damp with sweat, feet throbbing, carrying a small packet of rice and dal for dinner. The flat reeked of stale smoke, spilled whiskey, and unwashed clothes. Pankaj was sprawled on the bed, surrounded by empty bottles and bedding slips. His bloated belly rose and fell with heavy snores that turned into a growl when she entered. "Money," he demanded without preamble, eyes still half closed. His voice was thick with last night's hangover. Riya's shoulders slumped. "I gave you my entire salary 2 days ago, Pankaj. The hotel supervisor deducted for damages from last month when you..." The slap came fast and vicious, snapping her head sideways. Pain bloomed across her cheek. "Don't lie to me, bitch." He was up now, short temper ignited like dry gunpowder. "You think I don't know you hide cash? Gambling den is calling. I need 20,000 tonight or they break my legs." She tasted blood. "There is no more. We have nothing left. The gold chain is gone. My last savings." He grabbed her by the throat, slamming her against the damp wall. His breath was sour, eyes wild with that familiar manipulative rage mixed with fear of his creditors. "Then earn it. That fat pig manager at your hotel always stares at your tits. Go to him. Spread your legs. Bring the money. Or I'll drag you there myself." Riya's vision blurred with tears and oxygen deprivation. This was not new. Over the past months, the demands had escalated from beatings to this, pimping her out. She had resisted every time, enduring worse punishments instead. 3 months after return, ***. It had started subtly. After a massive loss on a cricket match, Pankaj had come home with 2 of his sleazy friends. "Riya will entertain you," he had announced, laughing. She had fought back then, screaming, clawing, earning a black eye and a night locked outside on the balcony in the rain. The friends had left disappointed, but the idea had taken root in Pankaj's twisted mind. Another night, 2 weeks later, he had dragged her to a cheap lodge where a client waited. Riya had vomited in the bathroom before fleeing through a window, barefoot, running through alleys until her lungs burned. Pankaj had beaten her unconscious upon her return. Now, the demands were constant. Present, the escalation. Tonight, Pankaj was beyond reasoning. Debts had mounted to nearly 2 lakhs. Loan sharks had visited the flat twice, leaving veiled threats and 1 broken finger on Pankaj's left hand as a warning. His gambling addiction had consumed him entirely: online apps, underground dens, street cockfights. He no longer worked even the occasional mechanic jobs. "You owe me your life, remember," he snarled, tightening his grip. "I took you in when that scientist husband of yours threw you out. You're nothing without me." The words ignited something deep inside Riya. The scientist in her, the one who had built a time machine, whispered coldly, "***he is the anomaly. The regret was never him dying. It was him living, ***." But she stayed silent, enduring another round of his rage. He ripped her uniform, shoving her onto the bed. The sex was brutal, punitive. No foreplay, no care, just angry thrusts that tore at her already compromised body. He finished quickly, grunting like an animal, then demanded food. Riya cooked in silence, bruises forming on her neck and thighs. The HIV diagnosis had come 2 weeks earlier. At a government clinic, after weeks of recurring fevers, night sweats, and opportunistic infections, the doctor had delivered the news with clinical detachment. "Positive. Advanced stage. Your partner." Riya had laughed then, a broken, hysterical sound that frightened the nurse. Transmitted from Pankaj, almost certainly. The man she had saved from a motorcycle crash, protected from justice after assaulting a child, had gifted her death in slow motion. She had not told him. What was the point? The day of the diagnosis, Riya had wandered the streets for hours afterward. She sat in a park, watching children play, and contemplated ending it. A bottle of sleeping pills from a roadside pharmacy tempted her. But something, residual scientific curiosity, or perhaps twisted hope, kept her breathing. She returned to the flat that night to find Pankaj in a cocaine-fueled rage, smashing furniture. He had accused her of stealing his hidden stash and beaten her so badly she missed 2 shifts, nearly losing her job. Building to the breaking point. Over the next week, tension coiled like a spring. Pankaj's creditors grew bolder. One evening, 2 muscular men waited outside the flat. They slapped Pankaj around while Riya watched from the corner, terrified. "1 week," they warned. "Or we take your woman as payment." That night, Pankaj turned his terror into fury against her. "You useless whore," he screamed, throwing a whiskey bottle that shattered near her head. Glass shards cut her arm. "Go to the hotel. Find clients. 10,000 per night. I don't care how many." Riya's voice, when it finally emerged, was calm. Too calm. "No." The word hung in the air like a gunshot. Pankaj stared, then laughed incredulously. "What did you say?" "I said no." Riya stood straighter, despite the pain in her ribs. Memories flashed, the time machine's blue glow, Aman's heartbroken eyes in 2011, the bribe envelopes in the slum, the video of a naked, broken child, the bar-room moans, the wedding ring she no longer wore. I saved you, Pankaj. I destroyed everything, my career, my marriage, a child's justice, for you. And you turned into this. His face twisted. The short temper detonated. He charged, fist raised. The fight was raw, primal, confined to the tiny kitchen area. Pankaj swung wildly, connecting with her jaw. Riya tasted blood but didn't fall. She grabbed a plate and smashed it across his face. He roared, tackling her to the floor. They grappled among scattered utensils and spilled dal. His hands closed around her throat again. Black spots danced in her vision. In that moment of choking darkness, Riya's hand found the kitchen knife on the floor, the same one she used to chop vegetables for the meals he never thanked her for. The blade was dull but sufficient. She drove it upward with all her remaining strength. The knife sank into his chest with a sickening, wet thud. Not cinematic spray, but a sudden bloom of dark blood soaking his dirty vest. Pankaj's eyes widened in shock. His grip loosened. He gasped, a gurgling sound, hands clawing at the handle protruding from just below his sternum. Riya, you, blood bubbled at his lips. His sly, manipulative face contorted in disbelief and pain. He tried to stand but collapsed sideways, knocking over the small gas stove. The smell of blood mixed with spilled kerosene. Riya scrambled back, hyperventilating, covered in his blood. It was warm, sticky, real. Pankaj twitched, eyes locked on hers, accusing, terrified. A final wheeze escaped him. Then stillness. She sat there for what felt like hours but was only minutes, rocking back and forth. No triumph. Only hollow exhaustion and the metallic scent of death. The man she had once crushed on, the regret that had driven her to rewrite time, lay dead on the cheap tiled floor because of her. Sirens in the distance, perhaps unrelated, but panic surged. She washed hurriedly in the tiny bathroom, changing into a spare salwar kameez, stuffing some clothes, cash, and the clinic report into a small bag. She wiped fingerprints instinctively, the scientist's mind functioning on autopilot. No note. No goodbye. Riya fled into the Bengaluru night, rain beginning to fall as it had in Pune years ago. She ran through flooded alleys, heart pounding with thriller-like urgency, expecting hands to grab her at every corner. Behind her, the flat door hung open, a silent witness to the end of one nightmare and the birth of another. She became a ghost on the streets. For days, she moved between shelters, then abandoned buildings, scavenging food. The laughter started soon after, soft at first, then louder. I was a scientist, she would mutter while picking through garbage dumps for recyclables. I built a time machine. I saved the wrong man. Passers-by avoided the disheveled woman talking to herself. One afternoon, near a busy highway, she was sorting plastic bottles when a familiar car slowed. Their eyes met. Aman, in the driver's seat beside his pregnant wife Priya, stared in horror. Recognition. Pity. Regret. He didn't stop. The car accelerated away. Riya laughed louder, tears streaming. See? I told you I was a scientist. The knife, cleaned and discarded in a canal, had closed one chapter. But the timeline's final irony was still unfolding. The Bengaluru night swallowed Riya whole the moment she stepped out of the blood-soaked flat. Rain lashed down in silver sheets, turning the narrow alley into a river of filth. Her small bag slung over her shoulder, clothes still damp with Pankaj's blood despite her frantic washing, she ran. Bare feet slapped against cracked concrete and overflowing gutters. Every shadow seemed to reach for her, Pankaj's ghost already haunting her with gurgling last breaths and wide, accusing eyes. She didn't stop until her lungs burned and her legs gave out near an under-construction flyover on the city's eastern periphery. Collapsing behind a pile of cement sacks, she curled into a ball, shivering violently. The knife wound on her conscience throbbed worse than any physical injury. "I killed him," she whispered to the rain. "I saved him, and then I killed him." Sleep came in fragments, nightmares of the time machine's blue ring, Amon's heartbroken face in 2011, the wet thud of the blade entering flesh. By dawn, survival instincts, sharpened by her scientist's analytical mind, kicked in. She couldn't go back. Police would trace her eventually, even with the bribes she had once orchestrated in another life. She was now Riya Mehra, hotel servant, wife of a murdered gambler, a ghost in the system. First days, the raw edge of nothing. The initial week was pure animal survival. Riya moved between half-demolished buildings and roadside bushes, avoiding CCTV-heavy areas. Hunger gnawed constantly. She learned the rhythms of the street, when bakery vans discarded day-old bread, which dumpsters behind malls yielded edible scraps before stray dogs claimed them. Her once pristine hands, capable of precise quantum calibrations, now sifted through rotting garbage for plastic bottles and scrap metal she could sell for 20 or 30 rupees. One evening, behind a popular biryani restaurant in Indiranagar, she fought a pack of feral dogs for half-eaten packets. A deep bite on her calf drew blood, warm, sticky, mixing with monsoon mud. She cleaned it with dirty rainwater, knowing infection was inevitable given her compromised immune system. The HIV she carried laughed silently in her blood. She found temporary shelter in a government night home for women, but the stories there broke her further. Young runaways, abandoned wives, drug addicts, all with dead eyes. When a counselor asked her name and story, Riya muttered, "I was a scientist. I built a machine that folds time." The woman gave her a pitying look and extra rice. No one believed her. Why would they? The mental fracture. By the third week, the laughter began. It started softly while she sorted recyclables near a highway divider under the brutal afternoon sun. "I calibrated the temporal buffers myself," she told a crushed plastic bottle, holding it like a specimen. "Negative energy density. Entangled particles. Pankaj should have died, but I saved him. Stupid. So stupid." Then came the chuckle, low, broken, rising into genuine laughter that drew stares from passing motorists. Some threw coins. Others sped up, uneasy. Memories assaulted her in vivid, unwanted flashbacks. She would see the Pune bar room, Pankaj's rough hands, the torn couch, her own moans of betrayal. Then the 2011 slum, Arjun's naked, trembling body, the thick envelopes of bribe money. Young Amon's devastated face after the cheating accusation. The machine's hum. Each vision ended with Pankaj's final gurgle. She began talking to versions of people who weren't there. "Amon," she whispered one night while huddled under a bridge, "you were right. The paradox consumed us. Causal loops don't forgive personal greed." She argued with the imaginary Amon for hours, sometimes screaming, sometimes crying. Other homeless people gave her wide berth. Time traveler lady, they called her. One particularly harrowing week, Riya tried to claw back dignity. She cleaned herself in a public toilet, washed her only spare clothes, and went to a former colleague's house in Koramangala. Dr. Meera Rao, once a junior researcher on their team, opened the door and gasped. "Riya? My God, what happened to you?" For 2 days, Meera offered shelter, clothes, and quiet horror as Riya poured out a sanitized version of events. No time travel, just a bad marriage. Meera even arranged a doctor visit. The HIV confirmation was delivered gently, with ARV prescriptions and counseling. For 48 hours, Riya felt human again. She bathed properly. Ate hot food. Slept on a real mattress. Then Pankaj's old associates found her. 2 thugs from his gambling circle banged on Meera's gate at midnight. "Where is that bitch? She killed Pankaj Bai." They had traced her through street networks. Meera, terrified for her own family, begged Riya to leave. "I'm sorry. I can't risk this." Riya fled again into the night, the brief taste of normalcy making the streets taste even more bitter. Another scenario unfolded at a temple complex where beggars gathered. A kind priest gave her prasad and let her sleep in the outer hall. For a week she helped sweep the premises, finding fragile peace in the chants and incense. But withdrawal from her old life triggered deeper hallucinations. One midnight, she stood in the temple courtyard screaming at an invisible Pankaj, "You ruined me. I gave you life twice, once by saving you, once by ending you." Security removed her gently but firmly. Hunger, infection, and untreated trauma eroded her further. Fever burned nightly. Her body, once athletic from long lab hours, grew gaunt. Opportunistic infections appeared, painful sores, persistent cough. Yet she kept moving, driven by a scientist's stubborn curiosity about how far a human could fall. The laughing ghost. Months blurred. Riya became a fixture on certain scavenging routes. Near MG Road and the Outer Ring Road, commuters grew accustomed to the disheveled woman with matted hair who laughed while talking to garbage. "I invented time travel," she told a group of street children one afternoon, her voice a theatrical whisper. "Went back to save my college crush. Framed my husband. Kissed the devil. Fucked him in a dirty bar while my husband watched. Bribed a child's parents after he was stripped and beaten. And for what?" She held up a dirty pet bottle like a trophy. "This. All of this." The children laughed nervously and ran away. Her dopamine hits came from these monologues, brief chemical relief in a brain starved of purpose. Anxiety followed in crashing waves. Every police siren spiked terror, asterisk they found the body. They're coming for the time traveler murderer, asterisk heartbreak was constant. She missed Aman, not the betrayed husband of the fractured timeline, but the steady, loving partner from the original life. The one who had believed in her genius. The highway encounter. It happened on a muggy afternoon near the elevated highway leading to the airport. Riya was bent over a pile of roadside trash, separating metals from plastics. Her clothes hung in rags. Sores marked her arms. She was mid-monologue, the equations were perfect. 48 hours. Local causal bubble. But regret is its own singularity. It pulls everything in. A silver sedan slowed in the traffic. The window was down. Aman Kapoor sat in the driver's seat, crisp shirt, salt and pepper hair neatly combed. Beside him, Priya, visibly pregnant now, glowing with health, pointed at something on her phone. Their toddler son babbled in the back seat. Their eyes met. Time froze. Aman's face drained of color. Recognition. Horror. Deep, aching pity. The man who had once followed her into the past, who had watched every betrayal with breaking eyes, now saw the final product of those choices. Riya straightened slowly, a manic smile spreading across her cracked lips. "Aman," she called out, waving a dirty hand. "Look. I'm still a scientist. See this quantum entanglement?" She held up tangled wires from an old charger. Laughter bubbled up, wild, unhinged, heartbreaking. Priya noticed and touched Aman's arm in concern. For a second, Aman's hand hovered near the door handle, as if some remnant of love or duty compelled him to stop. Their gazes locked, his filled with sorrowful finality, hers with desperate hope and madness. Then the traffic light changed. Aman drove away without stopping. The car merged into the flow of normal lives, leaving Riya shrinking in the rearview mirror. She laughed louder than ever, collapsing onto the trash pile. Tears streamed down her face, cutting clean tracks through the grime. He left again. Of course he did. I framed him. I betrayed him. I chose the wrong variable. The encounter broke what little remained. Riya stopped scavenging systematically. She wandered aimlessly, sleeping in parks, railway stations, and under bridges. Fever consumed her. In lucid moments, she composed imaginary research papers on the ethics of time travel, speaking them aloud to indifferent crows. In delirious ones, she begged Pankaj's ghost for forgiveness while cursing him. One night, near the railway tracks, a group of men approached her in the darkness. She was too weak to run. What happened afterward was a blur of shadows and pain, another violation in the long chain started by her single regret. She survived, but something fundamental inside her finally died. Riya became almost feral, talking continuously to the scientist she once was. "Understand the universe," she repeated like a mantra, the old motto from better days. But I unraveled mine instead. Aman, safe in his warm home, never forgot that highway glance. He held his son closer that night, whispering silent thanks to whatever forces had spared him from her path. Yet the guilt lingered, a quiet shadow on his otherwise healed life. Riya's descent had reached its final circle. The streets had claimed the brilliant mind that once conquered time. Now, time was claiming her in the cruelest way possible. A full year had passed since the highway encounter. Dr. Aman Kapoor's life had settled into a rhythm of quiet, hard-earned contentment. The Quantum Frontiers Institute had promoted him to Director of Temporal Research Ethics, a position created partly because of the classified logs he had sealed away forever. The time machine remained dismantled in a locked sub-basement vault, its components stripped and scattered across dummy projects. No one would ever recreate it under his watch. At 37, Aman rose early each morning in their spacious apartment in Whitefield. He prepared breakfast for Priya and their one-year-old son, Arav, whose laughter filled the home like sunlight. Priya, now a senior researcher in AI safety, often teased him about his salt and pepper hair and the faint worry lines that never fully disappeared. "You carry the weight of the universe sometimes," she would say, kissing his forehead. He would smile, pull her close, and push away the ghosts. But the ghosts never truly left. They lingered in quiet moments, when rain pattered against windows, when a motorcycle roared past, when he caught a glimpse of a woman with long dark hair in a crowd. Riya. The brilliant mind he had once loved. The woman who had dragged him through hell and emerged as a broken specter on the streets. He had tried to help once, months after that highway glance. Anonymous donations to shelters, quiet inquiries through old contacts. But Riya Mehra had vanished into the underbelly of the city. Some said she was time travel lady, the madwoman who spoke of quantum machines and dead lovers. Others claimed she had moved to another state. Aman had stopped searching after Priya found him crying in his study one night. "She made her choices," Priya had whispered gently. "You can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved." On a humid Wednesday evening in May 2027, Aman sat in the living room with Arav on his lap, watching the evening news while Priya cooked dinner. The anchor's voice droned through local headlines, political scandals, tech breakthroughs, weather warnings. Then the story appeared. Breaking news from Bengaluru's Eastern Railway tracks. Police have discovered the body of a woman identified as Riya Mehra, aged 35. The victim was found naked, showing signs of severe struggle and sexual assault. According to preliminary reports, she had been living on the streets for several months. Authorities suspect multiple perpetrators. The body was discovered by morning commuters early today. Aman froze. The remote slipped from his hand. The screen showed grainy footage, yellow police tape fluttering in the breeze, a sheet-covered form on the gravel beside the tracks, forensic teams in white suits. A blurred photo of Riya appeared, her most recent ID image from the hotel job, before the full descent. She looked hollow even then. The reporter continued in a grave tone, "Riya Mehra had a troubled history. Married to Pankaj Mehra, who was found murdered in their flat last year. Police could not establish a clear link at the time due to lack of evidence. Neighbors described her as erratic, often speaking incoherently about being a scientist and time travel. She had visible signs of long-term abuse and possible untreated illness. This case highlights the vulnerability of homeless women in the city. Priya emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands. "Aman? What's wrong?" He couldn't speak. He simply pointed at the screen. Priya's eyes widened as she read the ticker. She sat beside him, taking Arif gently. "Oh God, that's her." Aman stood slowly and walked to the balcony, gripping the railing until his knuckles whitened. The city lights blurred through sudden tears. A year of suppressed guilt, buried regret, and quiet relief crashed over him like a tidal wave. Flashback, the weight of every choice. In his mind, the timeline unraveled backward. He saw the 2011 Pune rain again, Riya slipping the fake answer sheet into his younger self's bag. The public kiss under fest lights. The filthy bar back room where he had pressed his ear to the door, hearing every moan, every slap of flesh, every filthy word Pankaj uttered while claiming her. The bribe envelopes in the slum, pressed into a traumatized child's parents' hands. The knife sinking into Pankaj's chest with that sickening sound. Every intervention she had made to save one worthless life had stripped away hers layer by layer. Aman remembered the final confrontation before their return. "Some ghosts should stay dead," he had whispered. How prophetic those words had become. Priya joined him on the balcony, wrapping her arms around his waist from behind. "You don't have to carry this alone. I built the machine with her," he said hoarsely. "I followed her into the past knowing it was dangerous. I watched her destroy us for him. And when she came back begging, I turned her away. I chose this life." His voice cracked. "And now she's dead. Raped and thrown like garbage beside railway tracks. The woman who once co-authored papers that could have changed humanity." Expanded reflection and irony. The irony was a cruel, exquisite blade. Riya had saved Pankaj from the consequences of brutally beating and stripping a child. She had bribed, corrupted, and betrayed everything sacred to prevent that video from destroying him. In the new timeline, Pankaj lived long enough to destroy her completely, through domestic abuse, gambling, forced encounters, and transmitting HIV. His survival had created the exact vulnerability that led her to the streets. The child Arjun? In this timeline, he had grown up in the same slum, scarred but alive. Aman had quietly checked once. The boy carried invisible wounds but had finished school thanks to anonymous sponsorships. Pankaj had never faced justice for that crime. Riya's mercy had protected the abuser and condemned the innocent. Aman laughed bitterly into the night, a short, broken sound that echoed Riya's own mad laughter on the streets. She became what she feared most. A victim of the man she worshipped. And I got the happy ending she sacrificed everything for. Priya held him tighter. "You didn't cause this, Aman. Her obsession did. The regret she couldn't let go of. But he knew better. The machine had amplified every flaw. Time travel wasn't neutral. It was a mirror that reflected and distorted the darkest parts of the soul." Additional scenarios, the investigation and aftermath. The next morning, Aman drove to the police station handling the case. He introduced himself as a former colleague and provided what little background he could without revealing the impossible. The investigating officer, a tired man in his 50s, showed him photos, carefully selected, but still devastating. Riya's body had been found naked, bruised, with defensive wounds on her arms. Signs of multiple assailants. Her face, even in death, carried that haunting half-smile, as if she had been laughing at the end. Probably laughing at her own life, one constable muttered. Aman identified her formally. He arranged a quiet cremation, paying for everything anonymously. No family came. Pankaj's relatives had disowned both of them long ago. At the cremation ground, under a merciless sun, Aman stood alone as the flames consumed what remained of Dr. Riya Sharma. He whispered the words she once loved, understand the universe. Then added softly, but you understood the wrong part of it, Riya. Regret was never the answer. Final irony and closure. News channels covered the story for 2 days before moving on to fresher tragedies. Homeless woman's brutal end sparks debate on street safety. No one mentioned her past brilliance. No one knew she had once built a device capable of rewriting history. In his study that night, Aman opened the locked drawer. The quantum drive containing the full mission logs glowed faintly. He stared at it for a long time, then placed it inside a small electromagnetic cage he had built years ago. The data would never see daylight. Time travel died with Riya. Priya found him there hours later. She didn't ask questions. She simply sat with him in silence until dawn. Aman never forgot the final image from the news, Riya's body beside the railway tracks, the same tracks where trains roared forward relentlessly, much like time itself. She who had tried to stop the arrow of time had been discarded by it. The ultimate irony burned brightest in the quiet moments. She had saved Pankaj from facing justice for assaulting one child. In return, the streets, filled with monsters far worse than him, had taken her in the most degrading way possible. The woman who altered time to protect an abuser became the ultimate victim of unchecked darkness. Aman closed the drawer and joined his family. He held Arif close, inhaling the innocent scent of baby powder and milk. For the first time in years, he allowed himself a prayer, not to any god, but to the universe they had once tried to conquer. Some regrets, he whispered, must remain buried in the past. Outside, the city continued its indifferent rhythm. Somewhere in its underbelly, another broken soul laughed at invisible equations. But Riya's laughter had finally fallen silent. The machine was gone. The timeline had settled into its new, cruel shape. And in the end, time, relentless, unforgiving, impartial, had delivered its final, mocking verdict. Asterisk.
Please subscribe!